Our epistle lesson today is from 1 Corinthians chapter 10, first 13 verses. Hear the words of Paul, his warnings of Israel's history. I do not want you to be unaware, brothers and sisters, that our ancestors were all under the cloud, and all passed through the sea, and all were baptized into Moses in the cloud and in the sea. And all ate the same spiritual food, and all drank the same spiritual drink. For they drank from the spiritual rock that followed them, and the rock was Christ. Nevertheless, God was not pleased with most of them, and they were struck down in the wilderness. Now these things occurred as examples for us, so that we might not desire evil as they did. Do not become idolaters, as some of them did. As it is written, the people sat down to eat and drink, and they rose up to play. We must not indulge in sexual immorality, as some of them did. And 23,000 fell in a single day. We must not put Christ to the test, as some of them did, and were destroyed by serpents. And do not complain, as some of them did, and were destroyed by the destroyer. These things happened to them to serve as an example, and they were written down to instruct us on whom the ends of the age have come. So if you think you are standing, watch out that you do not fall. No testing has overtaken you that is not common to everyone. God is faithful, and He will not let you be tested beyond your strength. But with the testing, He will also provide the way out, so that you may be able to endure it. It's the word of God for the people of God.
Thanks be to God.
I'm going to make a confession this morning. When I was younger, and it's kind of carried over a little bit today, nothing makes me laugh quite as much as watching somebody fall down. There's a reason I like the Marx Brothers and Stooges and all that slapstick type, Dick Van Dyke and all that. I love that type of comedy. But even in real life, when I see somebody on a skateboard or for Pete's sake, just tripping over a sidewalk, I have a tendency to laugh a little bit. Last time, Bev and I went on this vacation several years ago to Hawaii, and we were with some friends, and we were driving down this road and you turn and you're facing the ocean, and there was a guy on one of the wakeboards where you stand on and you got the paddles, and I said, wow, that's cool. And then all of a sudden he went, his feet went, oh well. And it really made me laugh, Now I don't laugh like, if Bernie would fall down, I would feel terrible, You reach a certain age, if a person at a certain age starts falling, then you go, that's not too funny. But they did a survey about people who fall. And there's people over the age of 70 years old who fell twice in a year compared to a same age group who did not fall in a year. And they put little, monitors on them, their wrists and their ankles, and monitored their movement, their gait. And what they discovered was people who have a tendency to fall have a certain walking pattern that causes them to fall more often than others. Their toes are scrape a little closer to the ground. Their feet, they don't lift their feet quite as high. And they walk with a certain swaying gait that kind of leads them to fall more often than people who have more of a normal stride and that don't fall. When I think about falling, I need to remember that falling is not something that we ever plan to do. We don't plan to fall. The Apostle Paul wrote, "If you think you are standing, watch out that you don't fall." Watch out that you don't fall. He drew on the history of Israel, reminding them there are dangers when we do not pay attention to our relationship with God. For these Israeli people, their danger was they became idolaters. They practiced sexual immorality. They put God to the test. And each of them fell into destruction. They were offered spiritual drink, spiritual foods, and yet they declined it, believing that they didn't have to be too aware, that they didn't have to worry, that God had them covered. He got them through the waters of the Red Sea. Surely He's going to take care of them the rest of the way. They didn't have to worry about the relationship. But Paul wanted his readers to avoid the same mistakes they did. If you think you're standing, watch out that you don't fall. Falls, by definition, are unplanned and unexpected events. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, "I think I'll fall down the stairs today. I think I'll trip on the sidewalk today." You don't plan those things. They just seem to happen in our life. And Paul commented on these tripping trauma, these spiritual spills, these physical, not the physical flops. He's saying if you think you're standing, watch out you don't fall. So in today's passage, he wants his readers to know that the trials that trip us up are out there. They did that study about the walking. They said a elevation as high as a piece of tape can trip something. It's the little things, people. It's the little things that get in our way. We often think about the big things, the big obstacles. We're able to get around those. I mean, you're walking down the sidewalk, you see a big rock, you go around the rock. It's the little thing that'll trip you up. When you're dealing with spiritual aspects of falling and falling into sin, it's not the big 10 Commandment ones that you worry about. I mean, you know those ones, and if you go into those ones, you do so usually pretty voluntarily. You know if you're stealing off someone. You know if you're committing adultery. You know if you've murdered someone. You can avoid those ones. But it's those little things. It's those little sins that kind of start ganging up. Stuff that you might accidentally find yourself slipping into. Something like gossip. Something like just flirting with a coworker. What's so wrong with that? Something about telling a little lie just to get you out of jail. Those little things that get in the way of your relationship with God, that start to build up. They're little falls, yes, little slips, little trips. But the thing is, all those little falls start turning into bigger injuries as you go on. That's when the hip starts to break. That's when the ribs start to bruise. That's when the concussion may happen. W.B.J. Martin wrote in a book called Little Foxes That Spoil the Vines, commented not on the major transgressions of the Ten Commandments, but he started talking about the careless listening, the stopping halfway, the being discourteous to others, the flippancy, the ingratitude, the bystanding, and similar things that keep us from living out a Christian life. And what he wrote it on was based off the Song of Solomon 2:15. Catch us the little foxes that ruin the vineyard, for our vineyards are in blossom. That comes out of the midst of that love poem of a young woman in the Song of Solomon who is waxing over her boyfriend. The rest of the verse is she's enjoying her lover's qualities, and she speaks about how delicious he makes her feel. But in the midst of it all, she writes, catch the little foxes that will ruin the vineyard, for our vineyard is in blossom. And the vineyard that was in blossom was her love. The love was in blossom. But the little foxes, there are things that can spoil it and ruin it. Our relationship with God can be in blossom, but the little things can start tearing it apart and destroying it. You know what little foxes do, right? Little foxes are like little dogs. They mark territories. And they get in the vineyard and they'll start marking on all the vines. And next thing you know, the vine dies and can't grow grapes. Ruins it. We're the little foxes coming in and damaging your relationships. Your relationship with others. Your relationship with your spouse. Your relationship with your children. Your relationship with God. Selfishness, thoughtlessness. Taking each other for granted, not listening. Small, hurtful things. Enough falling, and you'll find yourself in danger of bigger falls. Here's a suggestion. If you're going to fall once in a while, do it in a good place. One woman wrote about that. She said two of the favorite places, she was a faller. She fell all the time. And she wrote, one of her favorite places to fall was in Italy. She said when she fell in Italy, dozens of anxious citizens came along and lifted her up and offered her advice and commiseration with her. And then she also fell in Manhattan, over by the horse carriages of Central Park. And the cab drivers picked her up and helped her out and even gave her a carriage ride around the park. Good place to fall. If you're going to get tripped up by a little fox, find a good place to fall. Being an active member in a caring congregation can be a good place to fall. Falling's not good. Let's face it. Nobody wants to fall. But if you are, it's better to be around loving people who can help get you back on your feet, help clean you up, and help get you on your way. Sometimes people take some moral stumbles. And when they do, the first thing they want to do is stop coming to church. They're probably afraid they're going to get judged. Some think it would appear hypocritical to come in after some spiritual plummet has taken place in their life. Most likely they're embarrassed or ashamed. But whatever the reason, when you don't come to church, you cut yourself off from a great source of help. Think instead of like the one man who was accused of taking money from the place he worked. He eventually was taken to court where he pled guilty as part of a plea agreement. He didn't serve any jail time, but he lost his job and he lost his pension. But he kept coming to church. He kept coming to church and sharing with his worshipers how he got himself into this bad situation. And the church rallied around him. They supported him, they encouraged him, they helped him get back up on his feet again. There's nobody here that's not subject to a spiritual tumble now and again. Little sins, little foxes, sometimes big ones. But stay with the church. Stay with congregations. Stay active. Get stronger. It's a great place to be when we fall. It's a good place to get back on our feet again. Thanks be to God. Amen. Our closing hymn today